let's talk about content creation. So here's the thing with content creation. I've shown you a bunch of different ways to find keywords and topics that you can create content around. But the challenge is a lot of people hear that and they go, well, what do I say about that particular topic? Well, guess what? There's a whole bunch of different ways that you can talk about that, whether you're talking about it or writing about it or social media posting about it or making a meme or making an infographic or whatever. So let's talk about what types of articles and posts. I'm going to focus on that, realizing you can take those things and turn them into articles and everything else, into videos and everything else like that from there. Let's talk about the different content structures that you can use. All right. So here we go. I'm going to give you a list, a whole bunch of different ideas, which is really cool because the more ideas you have, the more of content types, the more freedom you get to be able to say what you want to about those topics in a whole bunch of different ways. All right. First one, a definitive guide. So these are what we also call pillar posts, where you're trying to create the best on the web post about that particular subject. They're oftentimes 3,000, 6,000, 10,000 words with a table of contents and a bunch of different sections down. They're going to take you 10 hours to write. But those tend to do incredibly well in the search engines, and they are definitely worth doing for the core topics that you specialize in. I strongly recommend creating a definitive post for a number of those different areas. All right. Sort of the opposite of that is a quick reference. And by the way, you can create a quick reference for something you've also created a definitive post on. So let's say you've created a definitive post about internal linking, how to link from one page on your site to other pages on your site, how to do it the best way. So that's a definitive post. And so it's 3,000, 6,000 words, and it's got a lot of detail in it. Well, maybe you step back and then say, okay, now I'm going to give you just a quick guide. I'm not going to show you how to do it. This is just like the cheat sheet that if the teacher allows you to bring 5 pages of notes into the test, this is that 5 pages of notes. And so you're giving them just a shorter version of that, incredibly powerful. And people love them, by the way. And you can always link out from that to other articles that give more depth on them. Next is my personal workhorse, the how-to. So I love how-to posts. I personally think that we can do how-to posts. You could only do how-to posts and do very well your entire career, especially if you do how-to posts with the combination of definitive posts. Do those two things together, and you've got yourself just like the rest of your career all in one. But there's a whole bunch of other ways, and so let's go on and talk about them. What about definitions? I find it remarkable how many times somebody has said, well, Don, what does this mean? And it's like, I totally forget sometimes because we have certain terms that we use. These are jargon words. They're specific to us and our industry. And so sometimes you need to just define those things. And those can be incredibly valuable because a lot of people are Googling, what does this mean? And if you've got the article that does a better job of describing that, you can get put up in the featured snippet, that little section in Google where they allow you to click on people also ask or something like that and be able to see that definition. And people will come to your page to get the full definition. All right. Next, another favorite one of mine is tools and resources. So tools and resources, these are the tools that I use. These are my favorite sites that I use to get data. These are places that I go. So tools and resources are incredibly valuable. Next, reviews. So tools and resources is the one thing, but if you can give reviews of different pieces of software, different sites, the best blogs on this subject, the best YouTube channels on this, the best people to follow on Instagram. So those are some of the tools and resources combined with reviews. But then you can also do things like, here are 3 pieces of software, and I'm giving you a definitive review of what I like, what I don't like about each one of those pieces of software. Incredibly powerful content that Google loves to link to it, and people love them. Next is secrets. So secrets that the people who are professionals in the category know that no one else knows. Those are, people love them absolutely love them and can go so deep into them and become so valuable. All right. Next is best of. So you can go back and say, hey, here are my best articles from the last year, or my best videos, or the best videos, so anytime you've got a best of, best recipes, best places to go to, any of those kind of best ofs. All right. Next is interviews. And I break interviews into two groups. The first one is interviews within the industry. So you're bringing other people from your industry in to give their perspective or their story or their expertise about a given subject and present them to the marketplace. Think of a podcast guest. Okay, that's an industry interview. The other one is interviews that are case studies. Excuse me. Presumably, you sell stuff. And if you can have interviews with the customers that have done well for you, that not only helps to sell your stuff, but it gives that person that you're interviewing another platform and increases their influence. Plus, it gives the people who are watching the ability not only to see that you have satisfied customers, but that they really, really like you, which can be incredibly powerful in selling more stuff. Next one is about us post, where you tell your company's story. Maybe you talk about a challenge that you faced. Maybe you're talking, some companies put up their profitability every month. Some companies put up, here's our employee policy and how we handle these. All those elements are very interesting to people, and they tend to do very, very well in terms of going viral, especially if you have something about, here's how we're handling the Great Resignation within our company, or here's how we're handling the work from home versus coming into the office, all those kinds of principles. Stories and analogies are always powerful. So they can be a story about one of your clients, about one of the challenge that you dealt with, how you dealt with it, or it can be a story about a cat and a tree that you then bridge to an analogy from that. So my most popular posts of all times have been things like description of my daughter's volleyball game, and then at the end of that, bridging to a business principle and how that works. So, we all grew up wanting to sit on somebody's knee and listen to stories. Use that. It works for adults too. Next is our perspective. So if there are things that are happening, and there are things that are happening in your industry, in the world, that you have a perspective on that your audience will want to hear. So by sharing your perspective with your audience and with the world, presumably your perspective is not wildly out there. And sometimes it is okay to have a perspective that is different than the rest of the world. That can be valuable in terms of getting you a lot of traffic. News. Hey, if there's news that you can report on in your category, here's the thing. We think that everybody in our category is aware of all these things. Your customers probably are aware of 10% or 5% or 2% of what's going on in your industry. If there's stuff that they need to know about, you should be sharing that. And the news doesn't have to necessarily be breaking news that this happened 10 minutes ago. For example, it was a couple of weeks after iOS 14.8 came out that I even talked about it. It was a couple of weeks after iOS 15 came out that I talked about it. But that was news to many of the members of my audience, and especially if you use that news in terms of, here's the news, now that we've seen it shake out, here's how it applies to you. So application of news. Next is commentary on the news. So this can be the application, or it can be, hey, this is a path that we may not want to be going on, or here's how you deal with that path, any of those kinds of things. 3 more. Okay, who would have thought you would get 18 different ways to use content? Okay, next is mindset and emotions. You're in tune with your audience. You understand the mindset and the emotions that they're experiencing. Don't just not talk about it. We have far too many things in the world that we just sweep under the rug and never talk about. Your audience wants to see how you're dealing with those elements, those emotions, how you're dealing in your mindset with them, those kinds of things that can be very helpful to your audience. Next is what I call pointer post. I wish there was a formal name for this. There might be, I just don't know what it is. A pointer post is basically someplace where you're taking a topic that you've done a bunch of other content around, you're bringing people in and you're saying, okay, here's this topic, and this explains this aspect, and this article explains this aspect, and this video explains this aspect. And so the purpose of this is to give somebody a guide place that they can go and then go off to the places where they need more detail. I call it a pointer post because you're pointing out to other places that help people to get the more detailed answers that they need. And then the final one that I want to put up is, hey, don't forget to do sales pieces. So if you've got a great story, if you've got a new product that's coming out, a new feature you just added to your product, a launch, whatever it is, make sure you do things that sell things around that. And that can be written about a bunch of different topics because people buy your products for a bunch of different reasons. So there you go. 18 different ways, different kinds of content that you can create around a given topic. So the next time you're doing keyword research or you find a topic and you go, what am I going to say about this? Everybody's already said how to do this. You know, it's like you can only say how to click on this and go to this so many times. There's no value I can really add. Well, pull out one of these other 18. I got things flying all over the place. Pull out one of these other 18 and do a different version than other people are doing. And all of a sudden you just added value to the marketplace. So here's my question for you. What of these have you used? What's your favorite? And what are you going to use now and in the future? Let me know your thoughts. Put them in the chat. This is Don Crowther saying, just go do this stuff.